Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
America's entrance into World War II effectively ended the Depression. Men went off to fight, and for the first time in more than a decade, there were more jobs than workers. Enter the women.
More and more men are being called into the armed forces. Their jobs must be filled and filled now. And who can fill them? You. You women. You're the ones who must fill them, who can give our boys what they need. 1,000 more planes and more tanks, more and more guns and more ships.
After decades of telling women their duty was to stay home and take care of their children, there was a new message: get a job.
The war opened up jobs for the women. It gave them a chance to work and earn a decent living. But the black woman has always had to go out and work, but the war really made it more acceptable.
Tina Hill had been a maid back in Tyler, Texas. She went west aiming for a better life. When she was hired for war work at North American Aircraft in Los Angeles, it was the start of a 35-year career.
The pay was good. That was the main thing. The pay was good.
World War II was a very important era for black women workers, for all women workers, in fact, because, of course, they had the opportunity for the first time, really, in large numbers, of white women particularly, to move into the labor force at all. There were more and more opportunities of black and white women to work side by side as well, even though there was a great deal of racism that remained.
And I've always said that it's a mighty ill wind that don't blow someone some good. So by Hitler starting the war, and that helped the black woman out of the white woman's kitchen.
3 million women, black, white, Asian American, Latina, went to work in defense plants throughout the country. $350,000 women also joined the military. In 1942, the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, the WACs, sent women to the front lines. Mothers working in defense plants had to figure out what to do with their children. Most formed babysitting collectives, as the government promised daycare rarely materialized. Women discovered that working outside the home could be fun and rewarding. Their image was both patriotic and glamorous.
I go to college, but I arranged my classes so that I could help out in the war effort. This way I'll get my diploma and war bond.
This would be the makings of a revolution on the home front. For other women, a very different story was unfolding.
For Japanese American women and men alike, World War II was a disillusioning and difficult time. They lost their freedom, their civil liberties, their homes, businesses, and neighborhoods. More than 110,000 men, women, and children were uprooted from communities throughout the West and incarcerated in internment camps in very desolate regions of the interior.
People often ask, what was it like? Physically, it was tolerable, but psychologically, I think we were all traumatized to the point where you knew that you were there for a reason that seemed unfathomable to us at that time.
I was very disillusioned at the time, and I think even more so when I saw what Manzanar was like. It's kind of a shock to be moved so far away, and then to find that you're going to have barbed wire around us and a guard tower and a sentry that had a machine gun and a searchlight. And I think that all of us really were devastated by that, and that American citizenship didn't mean anything at that point.
The internment camps prompted the breakdown of the traditional patriarchal Japanese family. Many Nisei, second-generation Americans, were allowed to leave the internment camps to attend college in the Midwest and East. Ironically, the suspension of parents' civil rights resulted in unprecedented opportunities for their daughters.
My mother was quite strict in maintaining a certain decorum in the community. And so that I doubt very much if she would have permitted me to leave and go run off to college. But the circumstances in camp, I think, allowed me to do that.
Even here, in such unfair and unhappy circumstances, the wives and mothers who stayed behind made camp life bearable.
As the months went by, you found more and more people planting things and forming groups so that people could get together, forming baseball teams or whatever. And so that Manzanar really became a very beautiful place after a year of building. And in the end, it was a small American community. That was all we knew, was to live like Americans.
As the victory champagne was uncorked and there was dancing in the street, the Labor Department's Women's Bureau surveyed the new women working in industry. "75% of all of them, and 90% of black women, planned to work after the war. They said they liked the work and liked the money. America had a problem. Women who'd bucked the rivets in the bombers and worked the assembly lines woke up the morning after the war ended and were handed pink slips.
Our men need their jobs back. Besides, factories were never any place for a woman anyway. You'll be a lot happier going home and having some kids now that your man's back.
When the war ends, once again you have another reversal, and women are told that juvenile delinquency is a consequence of their going out to work, and now they better stay home and have babies and take care of their families because the families have been neglected during the war.
If having their men back home wasn't as blissful as they daydreamed, the Ladies' Home Journal advised women to seek marriage counseling so they could get their priorities straight.
Sometimes it's as simple as showing a wife her ex-GI's accusation that she's a sloppy housekeeper is quite just, thereby sending her post-haste to one of the 13,156 centers for adult education and homemaking now available in the United States.
It was the 50s. Marriage rates soared and birth rates too, as families settled into the comfort of the suburbs.
would you tell me why you're moving here to Levittown?
Well, I'm working in this area now, and I've looked the houses over, and I think it's a fine place to raise a family.
This was the life that became, for many, the American dream.
50s were the perfect time to live. And to be a homemaker was the ideal life, and I loved it.
When Life magazine celebrated the American woman in 1956, it chose a suburban wife and mother as its ideal.
There was no such thing in those days as a career, per se. There were women out there working, but I didn't know about them.
Marjorie Sutton was born and raised in California. Right after World War II, she married her high school sweetheart and settled with her husband just south of Los Angeles to raise a family.
All the girls, we got married after school, and we went right into homemaking, and we learned as we went. We had so many things to do, so much. Each child was involved in different things, and they had school activities, and I had to be a mother at PTA. We were in Campfire Girls, and the boys were at Boy Scouts, and we did all these things with the children. One of the best things in the world, I love to pack lunches, and they went off to school, happy little kids, happy little campers. We thought it was wonderful because we had all the money we needed. My husband was learning his business. He was going up the, as you would say, the corporate ladder, and everything went well.
Well, here it is, Monday morning, girls, and while you're happily starting the weekly wash, I know that each and every one of you is inspired with the knowledge that you're engaged in the fascinating business of making a home.
But life in suburbia had its drawbacks. Washing clothes wasn't as fascinating as advertisers would have women believe. And the isolation of women left home all day with small children could be frustrating.
It would be a tremendous threat to me, I feel, if I had to stay home constantly with her, because I feel that I would become as insular as those mothers in the park. I heard a 15-minute dialogue on detergents, which absolutely astounded me one day. I mean, it sounded like something out of a TV commercial. I couldn't believe that people actually talked that way. And it's either that or they talk about their children.
Betty Friedan, a mother of 3 who lived in suburban New York, called it the problem that had no name.
I mean, all the stuff that was being written about the woman problem, or blaming women for their husbands' ulcers or their children's bedwetting or their lack of orgasms or their not getting the kitchen sink pure white. But there was no name for this problem that the woman would express when she said, I'm Dan's wife, I'm Junior and Janie's mom, I'm a maker of meals and a putter on of diapers and a chauffeur and but who am I? You know, like, who am I?
Betty Friedan's question hit a nerve among American women. Her book, The Feminine Mystique, sold more than 300,000 copies in less than 6 months.
Women heard about the book, and there were cartoons about this red book. It was a red cover, and women had this great relief, you know, and they stop me, and they say, oh, it changed my life, it changed my whole life. I remember where I was.
No, I think that job's taking too much out of you. Why don't you give it up?
And what would we use for money? You don't earn enough to pay all the bills, and what the prices, what they are, we just couldn't get along without my salary.
In fact, the popular image of women as happy homemakers is misleading. By 1958, 43% of all women were working outside the home. Most had jobs, not careers, and they worked to make ends meet. Some were the sole support of their families.
The juxtaposition of family and work is the constant theme in the 20th century. Whether women neglect their families when they work, whether work inhibits women from being good mothers, those are the issues that have run the course of the 20th century, and I think we haven't resolved them yet.